Hey Snapchat, good morning. This is gonna sound really nuts and weird, and I already know it does, but I am kind of concerned. Good morning, YouTube. Welcome back to my channel. It's Ashley Catalina here. Today I am going to share with you a very interesting experience that I had this morning and my adventure into exploring the West Clocks clocks. More specifically, my mom's West Clocks clock. Hey Snapchat, good morning. This is gonna sound really nuts and weird, and I already know it does, but I am kind of concerned because yesterday I was watching a bunch of documentaries and videos about the West clocks and the Radium girls and the radioactivity in clocks, and then I realized when I got downstairs here this morning to go in the kitchen, my mother's Apple clock is from West Clocks. I'm trying to figure out whether or not this clock is radioactive, because I'm legitimately terrified. With my mother's health, she could not be surrounded by a radioactive clock that will disintegrate her bones. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up the Radium girls. Look up the West Clocks, Radium girls? I don't know, but like, that stuff is dangerous, okay? And this stuff was like produced, I believe, to like the 60s or 70s. And if she got this thing used, and it's older, and it's around even from the 70s maybe, or even earlier, this thing could be radioactive, and it kind of terrifies me. And the other thing is I can't find the serial number, and it's bugging me because I want to know what the serial number is, and the only way to find it looks like is to literally remove the back of the clock, and I don't want to do that because that risks exposing radioactive material. Let's explore some of the horrifying history that is the West Clocks Radium girls. Essentially, a company opened up in, I believe, 1885, 1886, somewhere around that time frame, and was producing and manufacturing wristwatches, clocks, and this West Clocks company actually ran up until the 40s, 50s, maybe 60s and 70s, if I remember correctly. I will actually provide some links in the description that talk more about this. If I get any of this wrong, because more than likely I will, or if you just want to learn more about it. So back in the late 1800s and the very early 1900s, like 1910, 1920, 1930, even 1940, the chemical compound or element, or whatever it is exactly, of radium was seen primarily as a waste material. It wasn't very valuable at the time. And this was before the atomic bomb and all of that. This one guy basically found out that you could mix the radium with some kind of powder and it would turn to like a paste or paint. So what they did was they thought of something very revolutionary for the time. Glow-in-the-dark watches and clocks. I mean, think about it. At the time, that would have been pretty cool, right? Especially if you had like a little handheld, like little wristwatch or something you could have with you that would glow in the dark. In fact, I believe during World War I and World War II, there were certain army groups and certain government groups that actually wanted there to be glow-in-the-dark dials on like sonar and radar machines, you know? I don't know the exact term, so you're gonna have to bear with me here. Alright, so to continue on my West Clocks mission, as you can see, it is back up on the wall. Because I'm a dum-dum, and I realized that this clock in particular was made in China, which means this West Clocks brand clock is very unlikely to have radioactive material in it. Why? Because all of the West Clocks clocks that had radioactive material were made and produced in a factory, well, in multiple factories. More specifically, there's one in Illinois and New Jersey, in the US. So yeah, it's not radioactive. During this time period, a lot of young women were hired to work in these factories that made these clocks. And what they were to do is paint the dials on the clock. As you can see with my clock behind me, it's not really moving, but the little dials on there, the little dials, they would paint those with this paint or this paste, and this would give it the glow in the dark feature. Sometimes they also paint the actual face of the clock in the background. However, when they were doing this, it also got on their fingernails and on their skin. One of the worst things possible is that the company told these women that they could use paintbrushes, thin paintbrushes, put it in the tip of their mouth to wet it down a little bit, and that way it had like a finer point at the end of the brush, and then dip it into the paint and paint the numbers and the dials on the clock. However, the thing about this is this radioactive material got into their bodies, and lots and lots and lots of women died. Their bones disintegrated. One woman went to the dentist because she complained of toothaches, and the dentist barely nudged her tooth and her whole jaw detached from her face. A lot of these women experienced horrible, horrible health issues from this, and here's the catch. The company told them this was perfectly safe when they knew it wasn't. In fact, it was not until a man got sick and died that they started to investigate this. Like, the Radium girl's story literally went to the Supreme Court, okay? This was a huge ordeal, okay? And it was awful for these women, awful. In fact, I've heard stories of where these women are buried and snow doesn't even stay on their graves. It just melts away because of the radioactivity in their bodies. So yeah, not a good situation at all. In fact, a lot of people just dismissed their complaints of aches and pains, and they weren't taken seriously, which is a part of sexism and issue at the time. However, that's a little digression that I could go into later. So the reason I was concerned was because I didn't know whether my mother had bought this clock, this Apple clock, online, brand new, or if she got it used somewhere. And if it was used, even if it was still in the package, it would be likely that it could still be a radioactive clock. And I didn't know how to figure this out. So I was kind of panicking just a little bit because I'm like, okay, how do I figure out if a clock is radioactive in my own house? Why did I think it could have been used or old? Well, because her mother, my grandma, had an Apple-themed kitchen like my mom does. She has like Apple stickers along the cabinets, an Apple oven mitt, that type of thing, right? And she has an Apple-shaped clock. Well, I did not know if she got this clock from her mom, and if that was the case, then it's very likely that this was an older clock and therefore could have had radioactive material in it. So that way you can kind of understand my thought process a little bit. However, I did some research, made some phone calls. I tried looking up the serial number. I tried looking up the specific edition of the clock. I found it on Amazon, brand new, made in China, not the US. Which means it's very likely not radioactive. So yeah, that's basically how my morning went. I was trying to figure out whether or not a clock in my own house was radioactive. Turns out it is not radioactive, because the West Clocks factories, or at least all the clocks that are now produced by West Clocks, are primarily in China, and the ones that had the radioactive paint on them were produced and made in the US. So, I pretty much panicked over nothing. But anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you learned something. If you've had any experience with West Clocks clocks, comment them down in the comments below, or anything else that you feel like should be added to this video. Peace, love, and harmony, guys. Bye.